It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Joining us now, you guys talk about a whole bunch of stuff, is Senator Ron Johnson from the great state of Wisconsin. Senator Johnson, first of all, you heard John and I were sitting here talking about lies. You and I were together at the RNC. What do you make of what you've heard out of the DNC so far?
Well, guys, sounds like you're having a good time there in New York. It's just 9-day difference. In Milwaukee, we actually were telling the truth. We were talking about the reality situation. In Chicago, it's just nothing but lies. And of course, they're completely relying on the mainstream media to cover up for them. I always knew. Let's face it. In the modern era with the leftist media, the first political messiah was Obama, right? And I knew whoever they were going to replace Biden with was going to be crowned the second Messiah, right? The next coming. Even I have been amazed at how they've done it. They're not going to hold her accountable. They're not going to provide any scrutiny over to her insane policies that she's proposing. Now, I was down there in Chicago with Senator Rick Scott, two business guys, that talking about the stark difference between President Trump, who also comes from the private sector, understands how hard business is, how government makes it that much more difficult. Contrasting that with Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, these guys don't have a clue, and it's obvious based on their policy proposals. So what we're seeing in Chicago, they can't talk about reality. They can't talk about how miserable their record is. So it's all about hope again. We're back to Obama's hope and change.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Senator, it's like they're trying to erase the fact that she has been in the White House for the last 3.5 years, like it's some brand new shiny object. And I think one of the starkest contrasts, I just heard President Trump earlier today, and he gave a speech in North Carolina, and he said, look, we don't want wars. We're going to also peace through strength. And he also said he will hold any senior military officials that had to do with the Afghanistan withdrawal. On day one, he will ask for their resignation because he said no one has been held accountable. And then on the flip side, you got Kamala Harris, who is still bragging about being the last person in the room, but yet isn't even talking about that.
No, of course, again, the mainstream media will not hold Biden and Harris accountable for the misery over the last 3.5 years. But I think President Trump will when he gets reelected. And again, I think it's fabulous news. If it is true, if this actually comes about where Bobby Kennedy endorses Trump and Trump tells him that he'll be HHS secretary, I think that'd be fabulous news. We have such an enormous problem in America based on chronic illness. And Bobby Kennedy has been talking about that for years. And we need to completely clean house within HHS, within the FDA, within the NIH, within the CDC. And I can't think of a better person to do it than Bobby Kennedy. And that would be a fabulous alliance. President Trump's going to have his hands full. He's going to be the dog that catches the car, right? This is not the best time to all of a sudden be put in charge of the disaster that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have made of this country. But he's up to the task, and I can't think of a better duo in terms of draining the swamp. Bobby Kennedy and HHS and those federal health agencies and President Trump getting in there and draining the rest of the swamp.
Senator Johnson, I was away in Europe for 7-8 days, and some news stories on the assassination. Is there any? You're on one of those committees. Is there anything new on the assassination attempt on President Trump? Now it says I think I had heard one of the sheriffs actually shot the gun out of
Thomas Matthew's
hand.
Like he did the first shot, the counter shot where it shot the gun. There's a report. And then the next shot that took him out was the Secret Service, but that there was that local shot.
But that was until 23 seconds later instead of, they were saying 16. What do you know, Senator?
So we actually knew early on, Washington Post reported on the local law enforcement taking the first shot. We really don't know, what he hit. And what's jaw-dropping to me is the fact that the FBI released the body to be cremated before anybody sees the autopsy report. So federal agencies, they're doing everything possible to make us suspicious of their investigation. the only thing we really know about what happened on July 13th is from local law enforcement. They've cooperated with us because they don't want to be thrown under the bus. And that's what it seems like Secret Service is trying to do to them. But, no, we are not getting the answers. I'm part of a bipartisan effort with Homeland Security, our committee. But they're giving us witnesses that don't tell us much. They're not. We still haven't been able to talk to the sniper who actually took the guy out. I want to know, when did you acquire crooks in your sights? I mean, if it's a false rumor that he saw him ahead of time and asked for permission to take him out, denied it, I want that sniper to tell me that that's a false rumor. But again, the FBI, Department of Justice, Secret Service, they're doing everything possible to just create suspicion. So our investigation will primarily turn into an investigation of their investigation. That's sad but true, but that's probably what we'll end up with in terms of our congressional investigation.
All I can say is the U.S. senators and Republicans, you better stay in power. Otherwise, we'll never know.
We'll never hear anything. Right. Rudy, Senator, you got a question, Rudy Washington.
Senator Johnson, on a different note, I'm African American, and I remember one time being very upset when 44 people were shot in Chicago, about 100 miles north of where you are, and I knew they were all young African American kids. And then 4th of July, 100 were shot and so many killed. And nobody's talking about that. And then today, I see where in Aurora, Colorado, the suburbs of Denver, that a housing development was taken over and basically African-American seniors pushed out. And this Venezuelan gang, Tren de la Guagua.
Yeah, Tren de la Agua.
Yeah,
yep.
Is taking over. And they also put out shoot police. And the cops are not going in. The management team is afraid to go in. And the governor is doing nothing. So we now have gangs occupying developments in our country, and we're not doing anything about it. And I'm listening to a bunch of happy horse talk at a convention.
Well, let's face it, the left, those are the black lives that don't matter to the left. The shootings in the inner cities, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Milwaukee, whether it's St. Louis, whether it's Los Angeles, the left completely ignores that crime and violence. They promote, defund the police. The people who want strong police systems are the ones in crime-ridden areas. And so the good news is President Trump wants to be president for every American. During his administration, every American benefited. We had increase in real wages, particularly of people in the lower income spectrum. Their wages were actually increased as opposed to what's happened under Biden and Harris. Because of massive deficit spending, they devalued our dollar. Now it's only worth 83 cents since they've taken over. So they made everything more expensive. People can't afford things. We've put the American dream, owning a home, out of the reach of so many people, particularly young people. So again, their record is a travesty if the media would only report honestly on it, and they won't. So this in the same world with the unbiased media, this wouldn't even be a contest, this election. But it's going to be a close call. That's why we got to get out there, tell the truth, and get everybody to vote.
If the Senate doesn't stay Republican with you guys, I don't know if we'll ever know the truth. It'll just be buried.
No, well, we have to gain the majority and get chairman, because right now Democrat chairman, they could care less about holding hearings.
And I just don't understand it. I don't understand why the truth is so hard to achieve.
Well, it's the reality is sometimes not real fun to face, particularly if you're the one in charge of producing that reality. The open borders, the 40-year high inflation, the war on fossil fuels. I mean, Larry Kudlow is absolutely right. I was in manufacturing.
Yep.
But behind our resin costs, which is dependent on oil prices, energy was the biggest cost component of what we produce. So if I wanted to compete internationally, I needed power, and the more of it and the cheaper, the better.
Senator Ron Johnson, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you, and let's keep America, America.
Absolutely. God bless you guys.
God bless you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you.